welcoming all our viewers to the program here today, International Affairs, broadcasting live from the Dhaka's Gulshan studio. My name is Shamsul Alam Pantho and I shall be moderating the entire program today. But let's get ourselves into the discussion, as we know that there is an incident of the ICE shooting of a 37-year-old woman inside Minneapolis in the United States of America. But before I begin the discussion, let me introduce all of our guests here today. To my left, I have Professor Abdullah Al-Mamoon, who is, of course, a political analyst and does hail from the Dhaka University. He is, of course, a profound academic for the country. I welcome you onto the program, as well as our geopolitical correspondent, Ms. Ambassador Norman Floyd Barnes, who joins us from Washington, D.C. I want to begin with Norman Floyd Barnes. I know that Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, is defending the ICE agent who fatally shot a woman of 37 years of age, Renee Nicole Good, who is, of course, a U.S. citizen with a 6-year-old child. I want to understand this incident unfolding in the state of Minneapolis. I want to get how Norman Floyd Barnes feels about this issue.
Good morning from Washington, D.C. Today we wake up to another day of turmoil and confusion here in the United States. As you stated yesterday morning, there was a tragic shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Actually, the site was actually 3 blocks from the shooting, the killing of George Floyd, as you remember several years ago. It's a state of tension. ISIS, let me correct that. The ICE,
right,
federal agents were deployed back to Minnesota. As you know, last week, a couple weeks ago, they was told to leave the city because of the federal judge ruled that it was illegal for them to be there. Chicago and LA to have troops in there, the government to have troops in the United States for the purpose they describe as fighting crime. The Homeland Security decided to send 2,000 troops into Minnesota because of the issue with immigration, particularly the issue with Somalians. And now they have a big scandal going on regarding the daycare center fraud. So the purpose of the 2,000 troops is there to go in there was to basically to weed out the illegal immigrants and to bring law and order back. Contrary to that, yesterday there was a incident on one of the streets there where a U.S. citizen, she a 37-year-old mother, graduate of Old Dominion University here in Virginia, was killed by an ICE agent. Unfortunately, and actually fortunately, the whole incident was recorded and put all over the internet. It showed where her vehicle was blocking traffic, blocking the activities of the government federal agencies.
right.
The agents told her to move. They approached the vehicle, came up to the vehicle, tried to get in the door. She put the car in reverse, put it in forward, and started to drive forward in the direction of an agent that was standing there armed, and he shot. He shot through the windshield. Actually, 3 shots, which hit her. The vehicle continued to move forward, turned to the right, and crashed into another vehicle where she died. The whole incident was in midday. There was a lot of controversies regarding the situation. She was dead at the scene. There was attempts even by bystanders and I believe one of her family members to try to revive her or try to help her. There was a medical person, and it was told by the agents to stand down, get away. So she died, of course. The situation caused a lot of uproar in the city. People was
Right.
protesting. They are still protesting, and this was blasted all over the United States. Homeland Security Secretary came over the air, I guess, very shortly, stating that it was a justified shooting. It was an act of domestic terrorism, and the officer he was in his rights to do what he did based on his training. As you know, matter of fact, I can tell you as a former officer myself, and actually an officer, a person who's been in that same situation, it's very tragic, very time. So they have to be reviewed by the investigation, which will be held by the FBI, and we have to just wait and see exactly the facts. There's a lot of circumstances going on this situation. There's a lot of rumors going on. There's a lot of pain going on, and the governor is looking at bringing out the National Guard for anticipated demonstrations and protests. How
Right.
this goes across the country, Congress is not liking what they seeing. They want answers. The position of the Trump administration is that they had the right, and this was a domestic terrorist situation, and she was considered a professional agitator. So now the conversation is, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And where would this continue to go?
A very astounding observation by Norman Floyd Barnes. I believe that this is an unfolding situation as we understand what the duties and responsibilities of
Yes.
civil members of the civil society. I want to come back into the studio and have a different angle to this topic that we're having. You see, Norman Floyd Barnes was talking about a shooting of an American citizen. In a broader aspect, Donald Trump had claimed his victory as the second or in his second term by stating that we will not start wars, we will make America great again. But just a couple of days ago, you've seen, I'm sure, that Nicolas Maduro has been captured. He has been taken into a New York courtroom, and where he pleaded not guilty. Today, he is laying there in a central jail. And of course, Venezuela sees the vice president taking in the role and the oath. I want to understand how you felt given this international regard, and does this set a limit to other nations such as Russia on claiming Ukraine, if not China's claim to the island of Taiwan? I want to understand how you felt.
I think first of all, I mean, this is a gaslighting issue what held yesterday, in our time, in fact. But if you just look back a bit on this incidents, in particular last 1 week, the number of ICE members were deployed, and we have heard that around 2,000 in fact, and on a debated issue on welfare fraud. And the city administration was not at all in favor of it.
Right.
And we found that the hesitation was going, and this is, I think, the outburst after the killing. We don't know in which direction it is going, as my counterpart in Washington was saying, that it will be spreading out all over the US. I don't know exactly that why has this happened, or it is planned or unplanned, but I think the message was trying to be given to the immigrants that America will be unsafe for you. That they have done in Minneapolis successfully. And if you analyze the full story very carefully with the critical lens, you will see whether that shooting was really needed. Was Douglas was arguing that it is very difficult to justify, and all the, including Democrat leaders, all the human rights activists and everybody, when they are speaking in TV screen, when I was seeing it in CNN, I didn't really find the reason, in fact, that she should be shooted. So this is one thing of the story. So this is the first thing, is clear that they're not stopping. Secondly, it's a threat to the international immigrants. And thirdly, probably Trump administration will try to prove that not only internationally, but nationally, the issue will be going on, and the continuous effort towards immigration or international issues will be addressed differently, although we have expected a different scenario before the election,
Right.
where she was telling about more of peace in internationally and locally. That has totally flipped off. And we can't really expect that this would stop. And as you were saying, that it will provoke other international powers
Right.
to not only towards Ukraine, but who knows, it could happen in other territories. And most unfortunate part is when the negotiation between American administration and Russia is going on, these kind of incidents, when you take account the Venezuela issue, I don't know in which direction it will take, but one thing is clear, that Trump administration, the message they're giving internationally, they're not obeying anything else, the Vienna Convention or United Nations Charter, anything else. And it's a renewed colonial approach. That is what I can really tag into it as a level. Right. That's a new colonial approach. And I think we'll have more discussion on the Greenland issue.
Yes.
But unfortunate part of this is that these issues, particularly the Venezuela issue, has already shaken the world. And it will create significant vulnerabilities, particularly those countries which are having threats. And don't forget, we already become a victim of the visa process by, the day before yesterday.
Only three airports that we can land in.
Yeah, this is very worrying, number one, and it's a hugely violation towards the contract with us to for the having the immigration, not only having the immigration issue from Bangladesh, but we always thought that we are a moderate country and we are maintaining a very good relationship with the US. But my question to you or even Douglas, how are we feeling being a Bangladeshi? So what I'm saying that this wave is not only affecting those targeted countries, but countries like Bangladesh, which always has very good relationship with US as it appears. But unfortunately, this decision to Bangladeshi visa will definitely need to be reviewed and rethink to define our future relationship with US. And when it is happening, I'm sorry to bring in local context.
No, of course.
The national election is coming in next February. So what message the US is trying to give to the people of Bangladesh as well as to the current government?
A beautiful observation by Professor Abdullah Al Mamun. I want to give the context to Norman Floyd Barnes. Of course, Mr. Mamun in the studio was talking about the US-Bangladesh relationship. Just very recently, the US visa bond issue had come about. Holders of B1, B2 are set to have some kind of US $15,000 visa bond before traveling into the US. And the only entry points where Bengalis may land is, of course, in New York, Washington, D.C., and California. So, once again, this is adding on to the fact that how they see outsiders from other nations and what is the immigration policy and how do they expect immigration to come in. Of course, there is a huge immigrant population in America, not only in New York. But I want to also add on the fact here that just yesterday, in the streets of Colombia's capital, Bogota, thousands of people gathered to show their support for President Gustavo Petro, who has asked people to take to the streets to denounce US imperialism and also the violation of Latin American sovereignty. I want to understand all of these themes from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Yes, this is a very
I believe we are having some kind of
controversial, but the situation. The our military fleet is still in the area, and there was conversation about Colombia. The conversation is geared around drugs. The drugs we're talking about is the amount of cocaine that is supposedly produced in Colombia, and he's giving warning to the president of Colombia that we are coming after you next. You should be very concerned about your activities, and we will not tolerate this in the Western Hemisphere. So this is now striking up another situation where basically where the United States is in the process of pressuring that region to come under one control, which is the United States. We do not expect that the pressure from the United States in that region will stop because of the arrest in Mandora. We expect that there will be additional pressure on that region, particularly Colombia, particularly Mexico, and most definitely in Cuba. The goal is basically to have complete control of that area to put it on a what we call a U.S. type democratic environment, participation. The goal is basically to ensure that the petrodollar is still being utilized and uh, the alternative of the BRICS and China and Russia agreements and cooperation is ended. Basically, they want Russia and China completely out. They want all the trade and commerce to go through the United States in the Western process. So the pressure is going to be put on basically what is moving, what's coming in and out, the transportation of energy, the issues with oil and gas and goods and services. So there will be additional pressure. The military will stay in the area, providing what we call a blockade area, and they will continue to talk to the governments, pressure the governments on basically understanding the American way and not work and continue to have agreements with Russia and China. So we are looking for what I use the word hot mess for the year because I don't believe that the Latin America and the South American countries are going to adhere to what happened in Venezuela with their countries. So they will resist. Colombia has a military and they already have been activated and they will not question any type of threats on their sovereignty. And so we are now engaging in 2026, where additional conflicts will be made. Hopefully, conversation and diplomatic agreements will come upon. We will not have a what you call a South American war situation, but it could happen. There could be issues, but right now plans are being made to control the movements and to attack the drug situation and the sale of that cocaine to the United States.
I would stout observation by Norman Floyd Barnes. There is a news that I want to bring out into the studio. Venezuela's state-run oil company, PDVSA, said that it was engaged in negotiations with the U.S. for the sale of oil. The White House later said Trump would hold a meeting with oil executives to discuss possible involvement in Venezuela's oil sector. I want to come to Professor Mamoon. You were hearing Norman Floyd Barnes. It's a very trying time, as he described it, a very hot mess. The year only gone through 8 days. This is the 8th day of the year, and we're seeing unprecedented acts from the most powerful seat on this planet, the President of the United States of America. So I want to see the exploitation of Venezuelan oil. Who is next? Today we see the Colombia capital and the Colombian nation preparing for what they call an attack on their sovereignty. So as Norman Floyd Barnes was also saying, that whether there would be a South America versus America war, he still is skeptical about it. But it may happen depending on what the Latin American countries are thinking about, given this very aggression by the United States of America. I want your analysis because we need to go for a short break very soon.
You see, just to add on to the background of the whole issue, we should not forget that China become the lifeline of many Latin American countries, both in terms of import and export. That also includes raw materials for their domestic production and also to export to many other countries. This issue should not be ignored in the whole process and just tagging it or lagging it, just saying that it's an oil issue only. This is the first point. Second, if you just follow the growth of the Latin American economy and the in the form of the FDI, Chinese companies to Latin American countries, that has to be taken into account as well. Due to the recent stability in Latin America and also for the availability of the cheap labor and also for the influence of the BRICS, these economies were having help from China. China's aid and assistance has different issues, and we'll have debate on that differently on Chinese aid and tide aid issues. But this is a reality that Chinese investment has increased significantly in Latin American countries, including Brazil. This is the first point I would like to argue. Secondly, when we are talking about the oil, we should not forget, and I'm sorry, most of your audience may know that Venezuela is the storehouse of world's largest oil. So that is one side of the coin. But recent international engagement, particularly with China in Latin American countries, perhaps one of the factors that has drawn the attention of Americans, particularly last 10 years. Biden administration dealt it differently, not creating unrest in the region, and their immigration policy is, of course, softer than Donald Trump, but it's different now. So these two issues culminated the present situation. In terms of the sovereignty of the Latin American countries and what Douglas has said, that escalation of the tension to a different level, even to a war, I don't disregard this point, but at this point in time, what Douglas was saying, that I'm also in favor with his statement that it would take some time, but as you said, the next destination seemingly maybe Colombia, maybe other countries, you don't know. And don't forget the Mexican case of grabbing thousands miles of land by the Americans. So the tension was always there, and most of the time, if you just follow the Latin American politics, you will see that most of the Latin American countries really went against their people's will, their sovereignty, and always tried to have a balance with USA. But the way things are breaking out, we don't know. The demonstration we are seeing in Latin America, this is massive now, and it will depend on the Venezuela case. How do they respond to US requirements, particularly what you said, the oil company was already there to negotiate with US companies. And probably you don't forget, I think Douglas could put in more information, that all the US oil companies, they like to go to Venezuela. So they need to have a slice from the piece of cake. So this is one side we should not ignore.
Right.
So in drawing the conclusion of the whole scenario, I don't think you will have a very good 2026. It's a bumpy road ahead for the Latin American countries.
Thank you, Professor Abdullah Al Mamun, for an astounding observation regarding Latin America. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for going to on a short commercial break, but do stay with us as we will bring you other headlines.
মিরপুর 10 ঢাকা।
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়? ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের কাছে যায়, বৃদ্ধ লোক খেলে পরে মাথায় দেয় হাত, যুবক যুবতীরা খেলে পরে এদিক ওদিক তাকায়।
ছেড়ে দে শয়তান, ছেড়ে দে, দেহ পেলে আমার মন পাবি না, ছেড়ে দে।
কোন ফলের বীজ নেই বলো দেখি দাদা, বলতে না পারলে হবে তুমি গাধা।
মন্দিরা চক্রবর্তী কার সাথে প্রেম করছে?
আমি এখন মা হতে চলেছে।
চিনেছি তোমারে আকারে প্রকারে, দিনের আলো রাতের আধারে।
কোন বাসায় শুধু দুজন থাকে, দরজা জানালা ছাদ কিছুই থাকে না?
পা, পায়ের নুপুর, ছন্দ,
মনে হচ্ছে কি ছু দিয়ে জাদু মন্ত্র।
এক্স্যাক্টলি, পায়েরে নুপুর আমার।
অরিক্স স্পেশাল সেলিব্রিটি শো তারকার ঝলক দেখবেন প্রতি শুক্রবার রাত 9:30 মিনিটে।
ভালোবাসা একবার তুমি বউ কইয়া ডাকো।
হ্যাঁ গো,
আর কত দূর?
আরে আমি তো ফিডের গাড়ির লগে।
তোমার গরু হাঁস মুরগি মাছ তো অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে।
কি কও, অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে? কেডা? হাঁস মুরগি মাছ।
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to International Affairs. Of course, today in the studio, I'm joined by Professor Abdullah Al Mamun, as well as Norman Floyd Barnes joining us from Washington, D.C. Well, this segment I want to bring in an American nexus as well, as we were already talking about Venezuela and their position regarding other Latin American countries. Let me begin by saying that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he will have a meeting with Danish officials next week after Denmark requested talks amid tensions following President Donald Trump's remarks in annexing Greenland. He added that Trump's interest in Greenland is not new, noting that the president raised the issue during his first term and previous U.S. administration have also examined the matter of how to acquire Greenland. It came as the Trump administration said it is weighing in options to acquire Greenland, according to a statement from Caroline Leavitt at the White House. I want to join with Norman Floyd Burns. I understand that this may be a repetitive issue, but there are updates regarding what is the political narrative, what is the soft power projection, how are those who make laws and rules inside the United States of America assessing the fact of Greenland, and what is the position of the Congress? I want to understand from Norman Floyd Burns.
Yes, Congress is currently being briefed on exactly the plan. The Senate and currently the House is being briefed on exactly the strategy put upon by the Trump administration in regards to the annexation of Greenland. The response, the feedback so far is that they're confused. They're not accepting the explanation, and they don't see how this plays into the "Make America Great" concept. This concept of bringing Greenland into the folds of the United States has been done before, actually 3 times before, 3 administrations before, about bringing it in. And it had met with lukewarm response. And the people of actually Greenland, 85% of the people are against this. But Greenland only has about 30 to 50,000 people total. So the issue is a strategic put upon it by the administration of the Trump administration that is a strategic location in the process of having a geographical influence and impact and control of the region. It holds a lot of course, rare minerals, rare earth minerals, is located beneath the snow, and it also acts as a buffer between Russia and China. This is more of a military type of situation where we have better control of who goes through there, what goes through there, and basically gives us a better defense for the entire Western Hemisphere. That's what the Trump administration is putting for Congress. Congress right now is still not buying it. We still have internal issues we have to deal with. So now we just adopted Venezuela. We're dealing with that hot mess in Latin America. And now you want to add on Greenland as another part. And we still do not have a balanced budget for the United States to operate daily. And we still have our issues with internal crime. We see in a situation with immigration, and we don't have a solution for healthcare. So we have a lot of stuff we're dealing with, and the administration, the Trump administration, is trying to expand its global impact. At the same time, we have a gap, a void within the United States. And also, I'm going to mention, Trump mentioned on a comment the other day that midterm elections are coming up, and he believed if something is not done, he feels that the Democrats will take over in the midterm, and he feels that he will be impeached. Another comment was made by him that if that should happen, his fears that that could happen, possibly happen, he would like to suspend the midterm election because of the fear that the Democrats will take over the Republican rule, which is another conversation, which causes another problem. And now we have another issues going on. Is now we're looking at the administration is trying to delay what is going to happen. And now we have another internal problem comes up now with that comment about suspending midterm elections, which is, of course, illegal. But as you know, the Trump administration do not believe in that concept illegal. You know, I do it until you tell me I can't do it. So basically, we have another continuation of what I call the hot mess. Is escalating. This is the 8th day of the year, and now we're into multiple things. And I don't see any changes or any slowdown. Hold on. Thank you.
I must thank Norman Floyd Barnes for, of course, opening this Pandora's box regarding impeachment, of course, stopping the midterm elections set for the end of this year in November. But coming into the studio, we were talking and discussing about Greenland. You see, the entire global politics is now moving to a different kind of state. U.S. is making attack on Venezuela, robbing it, plunder of the decade, if I would call it, and then we have a talk where it's going to seize Greenland and military use is on the cards. This is what they have rhetoric, or this is what they have theorized. According to Al Jazeera's news agency, we see that Greenland allies vow action if Trump moves to seize world's largest island. A German government source told Al Jazeera that Berlin was closely working together with other allies. Of course, a faltering of friendship here. We see at the end of the World War II, we theorized the U.S. and the allies. We referred to U.S. and allies being the nations inside Europe. Today, that very friendship is under strain as Greenland is a territory by the NATO. And if an attack of this sort would happen, where the NATO would stand? What's your observation, Professor?
You see, the world order has seriously been shaken with the Trump's statement, we need Greenland. And if I'm not wrong, it first came into the surface in 2019 when Donald Trump reiterated the security issue and the acquisition of Greenland. So this is not new, but as you said, the time is very important. And that is the reason I'm saying that the world order has already been shaken, particularly the trusted US alliance, who is, we understand, in NATO. There will definitely be unrest among the NATO member states. And as you said, Germany and other member states would be seriously disappointed. And as I said, that it has already, international order has already been shaken by this. And I would like to reflect on the two arguments that Trump administration again and again bringing into surface, that first is the security issue, they need this land. I don't know what kind of statement this is from USA, particularly when it is related to Denmark.
Right.
And secondly, they always considered Greenland as a gateway towards international world. As Norman has said correctly, they said the thing that for this, not only for the security reason, for sailing to the whole world and having the motto of Trump's rebuilding new US and rebuilding America again. What kind of philosophy he's following, we don't know, it is difficult. But if we carefully look at these two arguments and having Denmark into the equation, then perhaps, and also we should not forget what Trump has said recently, that Greenland citizens, they want American presence for their security. I don't know whether this is a acceptable narratives or we didn't have the opportunity to hear from Greenland people.
Right.
But you can really understand that it would not be accepted by Denmark and the citizen of Greenland as well. But what I can see, starting from 2019, there is something coming for the Greenland. And it will definitely cause serious injury towards the relationship of the NATO countries. And then if you review the whole situation as a third party, being a South Asian citizen, this is not something good. On the one hand, you are having issue with Latin American countries. You will now have issue with the NATO countries. And don't also forget the other fronts US has opened recently. And I should not tell you to forget the Iran issue as well.
Yeah, Iran is going through protests.
These are very interconnected issues. So the world is becoming very volatile, unexpected, and of course the one yardstick that is
Right.
US, and I don't know in which word I could name Trump, but by the one individual as well.
Right. That was a very brilliant observation regarding various topics. Due to time restrictions, we are going to lose Norman Floyd Barnes. I just want to have a very short question. Do you think that the global politics is being reshaped by US foreign policy? I just want a yes or no from Norman Floyd Barnes.
My response to that is that the global politics is being reshaped, and the United States is participating in that. The United States is not the leader in this, believe it or not. They are just part of a bigger picture. There's a movement for a new shift, a new world order that will involve China, Russia, and the
Right.
participation of the United States. Notice how I said that the participation, not the dominance.
Right.
So there are things that are being put in place. Things are being let go. Things are being adjusted. Another example, the Trump administration just put out an executive order that they're going to cut 66 of international programs pertaining to the United Nations. They're going to eliminate funding for that. That is a process of weaning away from international affairs, particularly structured at Europe and other parts that is not associated with the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
So there's a weaning process. There's a issue going on here now about I'm going to control my area. So now China, you can do the same. And Russia, we're going to leave you alone and let you continue with your journey for Europe. So now countries have to understand that we are by ourselves, and the trust issues between the Western and our country is not guaranteed anymore. You have to stand up and defend yourself and put things in place. Because if you don't have a defense, the same thing going to happen to you that happened in Venezuela. It may not be by the United States, but we got other powers out here that will basically take this example and utilize it against you. So a new world order is in change, a shift in how we do things is happening, and we have to take that in mind. Every country, every person have to understand that you have to protect yourself, and you have to do things in place, and you have to plan ahead. You can't assume that your neighbor or your friend or your whoever is going to come to your rescue. That trust has been eroded.
I must thank Ambassador Norman Floyd Barnes for joining us on a Thursday on this very program. Of course, that was a brilliant review of what that is going around on this planet. I want to come into the studio once again. I'm sure that you were hearing Norman Floyd, and he was saying that when you're in trouble, your friends will not come to your aid, and certainly that's the same for Venezuela. And we were talking about during the break about the BRICS nations. Of course, that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. All five who have strained relationships in the last 1 year with the United States on various accords. I want to understand how you see this, especially because they do emphasize on the de-dollarization.
Before I go into that, can I briefly reflect on Norman's narrative of three giants like USA, China, and Russia? So where comes the existence of the many countries of the world who really like to have balanced relationship with USA, even China, and of course the Russia? So this is one of the issues that will emerge in the new world order. This is one thing. And secondly, if you accept that these are the three heads of the world who will run the world order, and they will introduce and reintroduce new thing, then how about the existence of the United Nations? So that is a big question. I mean, I think, will he arrive again?
I'm not sure if production can reconnect him.
It could have been better to have him again. So that is another question, that how would United Nations reflect to the whole thing? Only by just putting the statements or organizing different sessions with no outcomes, or they would have something to say as a unity or as an entity against this new order, or what is going on? This is a big question, and I would like to put it to any spectator looking at our show now. Third thing is also very important. You see, the whole issue is not only the politics, it is all about economy, international relations, and trade. So we have seen the trade battle between China and USA. That has created the serious significance to many growing economies, including Bangladesh and including Latin American countries, including African countries. What would be the fate of international trade in this three giants fight? And when you look at international trade, of course, China is the leading player now, and then the USA. Of course, Russia is behind. But what would be the fate of the 600 million people And how would this trade be shaped up with the current international order? This is a big question. So are we heading towards a world of uncertainty, both in terms of economy, politics, and existence of the human being? And unfortunately, the world leader who always advocates about the human rights, about the sovereignty of the people, about the democracy, and if his behalf is such, then there's no space for you to live peacefully. This is one side. Let me now move on to the BRICS. And yeah, whole BRICS, all the 5 nations, they have serious issues with US particularly last 2-3 years. And I would like to first bring the example of India. And you have seen how India is humiliated by US, when we know that Trump and Modi are 2 good friends. But you have seen the reality of US interest, and that has shaken the whole India, not only as a state, but a country with so many people, and they are stunned with Trump's administration decision. This is one thing. China, it was already having issues with USA. South Africa, we have seen that they are being invited to US, but not
and then
really.
They're being bullied by the president.
In front of, that is what I was going to say, in front of the president. It was not a very pleasant experience by the South African president. And Brazil, we know the reality of relationship between Brazil and USA. Now the question is whether, as a conglomerate power, the 5 nations can really counter US. Currently, the answer is, of course, perhaps no. But what we need to see, that we don't like to see any colonial approach by either party, regardless of China alliance or by USA. We really need to have a peaceful world where the growing nations or developing countries, those are very respectful to international orders, and those really like to maintain a balanced relationship both with BRICS and with US. The reason I'm saying, if you take the case of Bangladesh even, we're having a balanced relationship with US as well as the BRICS alliance, including India, particularly India and China.
Right.
So if the world order is such like the Cold World War period, then you can understand the whole world's economy and politics would be under serious threat. So what I'm arguing, that we don't like to see this kind of situation emerging. So I would like to see that international community should raise their voice. Even LDCs, they have a voice.
Of course.
Because every voice is important in such a situation. Every country's alliance with even little pockets, for example, SAARC, for example, ASEAN, everyone should speak. And if ASEAN, SAARC, or African alliance do not speak up, then you're just absorbing, or you're having pocket negotiation, you have negotiation under the tables. That would not give the solution. On top of that, I really like to see that United Nations take a leading role, at least raise their voice in such a level, or create such an environment that all the countries can really at least raise their voice in a settled, accepted platform called United Nations.
Thank you for your observation. I will definitely talk about the hypocrisy, if you would like to call, of the UN. I certainly have some examples that I want to share with you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for another short break before we begin our last segment.
হ্যাঁ গো, এসএফিটার খবর ওরা জানলো কেমনে?
আরে ভালো জিনিসের খবর ছড়াতে কি আর মাইক লাগে? খবর ভাসে বাতাসে বাতাসে।
আরে দেখো, এসএফিটার জাদু।
সম্পূর্ণ নিজস্ব তত্ত্বাবধানে বিশেষজ্ঞদের সমন্বয়ে প্রস্তুত হয় এসএফিডের পশু খাদ্য। অত্যাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি এই পশু খাদ্য যেমন নিরাপদ তেমনি স্বাস্থ্যকর। এসএ ফিড, নিরাপদ ফিড, স্বাস্থ্যকর প্রোটিন। এসএ অ্যাগ্রো ফিডস লিমিটেড একটি এসএ গ্রুপ অফ কোম্পানিজের প্রতিষ্ঠান।
Grand Palace, 5-star chain hotel, Zinda Bazaar, Sylhet. Local and international cuisines. Exclusive banquet hall for all events. 5-star luxurious rooms and suites with bulletproof glass. fiberglass swimming pool, relaxing spa, well-equipped gym. Experience panoramic beauty at SATV Restaurant.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming all of you back to the program on the very last segment. Before the break, I was talking about the position of the United Nations on various records, whether it be the genocide that was held in Gaza or whether the U.S. invasion or the U.S. aggression towards Venezuela and exploiting of its resources, whether it be the Ukraine-Russia war. Why is the United Nations silent? Earlier on last year, I was at the UNGA conference, UNGA 80, and in that we saw how Benjamin Netanyahu, leader of Israel, was allowed to talk, and almost all, if not some, were left in the hall. Everyone walked out. And not only so, Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Liberation Front, he was not allowed to come to New York at the UN headquarters. I want to ask this question to Professor Mamoon. I was talking about the silence of UN, a body that is created as a means for all the problems of the world and how they will solve that. And of course, it's not only that, the United States itself has moved away from a lot of the organizations inside UN. One of those include UNESCO, the cultural wing of this entire program. US has stepped out where the Chinese government, Chinese administration steps in. So this is a new world order in which US does not seem to be alone. There is China and Russia following afterwards. I want to understand from your point.
If you critically review United Nations, even after the Second World War, the biggest failure perhaps is to fail or to act against the genocide in Palestine. And what you say that is showcase or it gives an intimation that ultimately this is the second chamber or the higher chamber of one of the US Parliament, nothing else. And if you look at the structure of the US, I think it's a old academic discussion, but for your audience, the Super Five, they controls everything. And you have correctly pointed out the incidents of Benjamin Netanyahu when almost, except 6, 7, almost left out the whole auditorium, but he continued speaking. And that prevailed. How come? Can that be a structure where you feel that your last shelter or your friends or allies chairs are beside you who to support? So that has given a strong message to the international community that whether this is the platform where we can really resonate and resolve issues that stands between the nation or among the countries. This is one of the things. And recently, this is no way acceptable, the Venezuela model. Who knows, that could happen to any countries of the world with less weapon, with less power, with less people. This is not at all an acceptable model of hijacking the country by the name of the president. And if you follow carefully the last 1 week activities of United Nations, I would like to ask you, as the anchor of this event, are you happy with that?
Of course, thanks for the question. I'm definitely not happy given that they've sent Christmas presents towards a terrorist camp in Nigeria. So they really don't have a border.
This is, first thing is, UN is unable to act, that we accept. Secondly, but there has to be an attempt to act, which is the most worrying part in last 1 week. They're not attempting to act. This is a huge predicament to world's unity, world's sovereignty, world's biggest platform. Thirdly, and if you look at the whole saga again from the last 7 days in relation to Venezuela, and if you review all the statements given by the United Nations, you would not find any direct allegation towards US. Every line, I was following the statements and the speeches, it is articulated in such a way, it only one word can suffice that, it is naive. And by doing so naive acts, you are making the United Nations as a bazaar. just a place of discussion, a gift giving, greetings, and wastage of money. You have bring a very interesting example of UNICEF or UNESCO.
UNESCO, yes.
And do you know one information that due to the Chinese finance to UNESCO, most of the world's international cultural events, regardless of heritage or culture, is all taking place in Beijing? Perhaps, well, I don't know whether you follow it or not.
The movement has shifted.
No, shifted to Beijing. But issue is, America knows this cultural and heritage issue is of course important, but this is a track to diplomacy. They don't really bother. And have you heard from US administration that they will again come back or they will refund or fund this? They are not. So what I'm saying that these issues of United Nations role and resoluting the international matters has already been in question, and I don't really believe that when it comes to the resolution of the Venezuela issue, I am telling you with authority of my limited academic knowledge that United Nations would not have anything to do, and they would fail more miserably than Palestine.
Definitely. I must thank you, Professor Abdullah Al Mamun, for your valuable insight and, of course, observations regarding worldly issues. Ladies and gentlemen, as I draw closer for the program here today is the 8th of January 2026. It is significant in major historical events such as the Battle of New Orleans and also the founding of the African National Congress, ANC. While this date is also shared for the births of pop star Elvis Presley and as well scientist Stephen Hawking. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. I shall see you all next week with headlines from across the globe. Thank you.